This is Betsy Sweet, and I am welcome to Maine Challenge, and we are doing a new thing. We are doing live from the State House today because this is the last day of the State House, except for one more veto day, but this is when they are finishing everything up. And during the last season of Maine Challenge, we have talked to lots of people who have made it happen. And so, hang on one second, we're going to do this. This is the joy of live Facebook. So during the last season of this past season of Maine Challenge, we have spent a lot of time talking to the people who make it happen. Legislators, advocates, allies, and during those conversations, they have told us a lot about things that are going on at the State House, legislation, efforts that they are making. So today, I want to tell you what the status of those bills are, the status of some of the initiatives that people were talking about, and where we are. That bell you hear ringing in the background is calling the House members back into session. We are hoping to have some guests stop by. It's all, crack shoot, can we say that on TV? It's a shoot, because their schedules are all different. Appropriations is meeting just down the hall to do what's called the appropriations table, where they're deciding on funding of bills, what's going to get funded, what's not going to get funded. And so this is a really important time. So I really want to talk about for a minute sort of all the amazing things that we have spoken about. We have talked about a whole category of how we get people elected, how we vote, and how our elections are run. We have talked about human rights. We have talked about healthcare. We have talked about the environment and the Green New Deal. We have talked about criminal justice reform. And we have talked to and with and celebrated people who actually put their necks out and run and serve as public servants, because that's an amazing thing for them to do. And it's a hard job. It's a really hard job. So we'll talk more about that as we get there. So what I want to do is just do a little rundown for each of those categories. And as I said, people who, guests who have been on the show and legislators will come and we'll just interrupt what we're doing and get their latest, what they're thinking. And also, if you have a question or you have a thought, you can just type it in the chat for Facebook and on the Facebook live stream you're watching, and hopefully we will get to the answers. So let's start. And first I wanted to talk a little bit about how we get elected. Voter reform and what's happening around voter suppression and voting around this country is huge. And there are lots of things that happened in this session, both attempts to undo some of our good voter laws. Maine is pretty good about our voting and access to voting, but so some was to make permanent some of the things that happened during COVID, like early voter registration and ongoing absentee. Those things passed and they're great. And so that's a really good thing for us. There were also some things, there was a bill that banned corporations from contributing to leadership PACs and contributing to candidates. That also passed with a few loopholes, but not too bad. There was a bill that we talked about to ban foreign corporations, that is entities that are partly or wholly owned by foreign companies, and banning them from participating in our referendum process. Because right now there's a loophole that allows them to do that. They can't do it for candidates, but they can do it for our referendum process. So that loophole was closed, unfortunately, and a lot of that is really based on what the CMP owners in Spain and in Canada and what they were doing on the referendum about the corridor. That bill was passed in the House and the Senate, and then unfortunately it was vetoed by Governor Mills, and the attempt to override her veto did not pass. So that didn't happen, even though we made a lot of progress in talking about that. The other thing was the popular national vote compact. We talked to the League of Women Voters and Democracy Now! In Maine about that issue. And basically what that said was, instead of having to change the whole electoral college and do a constitutional amendment, which is very, very complicated and hard to do, what that said was, we are just going to have states agree that whoever wins the popular vote, that's where their electoral votes will go. Many, many states have done that. This bill passed out of committee, but then it died between the bodies, which means that the House voted one way and the Senate voted another way, and they could never come to an agreement. So we didn't do anything on national popular vote in the end, even though we made some good progress forward. And then the other bill that I worked really hard on myself is semi-open primaries. And so semi-open primaries is a bill that allows people who are unenrolled, called independents in other states, but in Maine we say they're unenrolled in a party. It allows them to go in on primary day and just request a ballot from the Republican side or the Democratic side, one, not the other. And no Democrats can vote for Republicans, no Republicans can vote for Democrats, but they don't have to enroll in the party in order to participate in the primary. And this is important because about a third of Maine voters are consider themselves unenrolled. So this provides access to them. So we're really, really excited about that. That has passed through the House and Senate. It now is sitting down there on the appropriations table. I think what's going to happen, it doesn't get implemented until 2023, so I think it's going to sit on the table till next session in January, and then we'll get it off the table, and then it'll be ready to implement in 23 and 24, so for the next presidential election. So those are things. So basically those are some of the really important voting reform things. Again, Maine is known for between ranked choice voting and clean elections, and now some of these reforms. We are good at saying to people, yes, we want you to vote, and providing that access. So those were those things. We talked to people about these early on in the Maine Challenge, and that's where they ended up. Okay, let's talk about human rights, right? The issues that we see with the advent of Black Lives Matter and really raising some important awareness around the issues of race and around the issues of human rights. So we talked to Sherry Mitchell and Darren Renko about Indigenous rights and the Indian Land Claims Settlement Act. And that was to provide tribal sovereignty, among many other things. That bill was carried over. We were all really disappointed with that. It's not dead, it's not going to be dead, but the committee felt that there was more work that had to be done, and so they carried that over. So it's still alive, they don't have to reintroduce it, they don't have to have another hearing, but they will work on it next session. Another piece of that, Indigenous sovereignty for the tribes, is the gaming issue. And this is the ability of tribes to have gambling on their territories. As we know, this is true for many, many states have that, and tribes have that sovereignty. In Maine, they do not. And so this was a bill that was worked really hard, and they came to an agreement. They figured out how to make it work. It was all ready to go. And again, whether you are for gaming or against gaming doesn't really matter. The really question is whether or not the tribes have the right to make that decision in terms of their economic development, or the state decides for the tribes. So it's really about that issue of sovereignty and self-determination. That bill, again, was passed by the legislature, awesome. And unfortunately, yesterday, late in the day, the governor vetoed that bill. And so today, upstairs in the House and Senate, there will be votes to see if they can override that veto. And I don't know how that's going to go. I know that the vote was not overwhelming either way. It passed in both bodies, but it was not 2/3. So we'll see whether there's any change there. We also had a chance to talk about the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Maine Tribal Populations. We talked with James Mile and Joby Thiel from Maine Equal Justice, and James from the Maine Center for Economic Priorities. This is such an important piece of legislation. One accompanying piece of legislation was to require a racial impact study, impact of bills that are passed, which is awesome. That means every piece of legislation that is passed is going to have to be looked at in terms of its racial impact. So that's one piece. But then there is this permanent commission, and Representative Rachel Talbot Ross worked really hard to get that. It passed last time, but it did not have any funding to speak of. So this year there was $1 million. I believe there's about $1 million in each year, so that they can have 4 staff people and they can do the work. Now, I know that they had wanted more additional money, and I think they will continue to work on that, but they did get permanent funding, they did get baseline funding, and enough funding for at least 4 people to be hired to do this really important work on what's happening in terms of racial equity in Maine. So that was a really good outcome of something that we care a lot about. You might remember relatively early on, we talked to some of my favorite people, young people. We talked to Thea Sweet, who happens to be my daughter, and we talked to Morgan Riley, and they talked about 2 initiatives. So Morgan Riley has the Maine Service Fellows, and that is a bill that allows young people who go to work in rural areas of the state, it allows them to take off their student loans, and it allows them a stipend to go work. And that, I think it's like Morgan hopefully will stop by, but it's like 4 or 6 people, and that got passed into law. He's a new legislator from Westbrook, brand new freshman and a young guy, and he had this idea and he made it happen his first term, which is awesome. So that's great. And then the Youth Impact Commission, again, this was born out of young people saying, oh my God, why are old people asking old people how to keep young people in this state? We need young people we need a youth-led, youth-driven effort. And so they worked with the committee and they actually changed it, and there's a new title which I have to read, which is to expand youth-led perspectives in economic and workforce development. So that bill has passed, again, through the bodies under the hammer. Didn't even have a vote. It was very popular. And now it also is down, we're waiting any minute to hear whether or not that bill is getting funded off the table. And what that means is whether general fund money will go towards it. There are other options if it doesn't make it there, but so those 2 things did pass, and we're looking forward to their funding, and we are excited for what this means for young people. And you know, it's time for us who are older to put our money where our mouth is. You know, we say we want young people, and then we have to actually do the things that they ask us to do in order to have them have a voice. So that's very exciting. So. The other good thing that happened, and we didn't talk about this, but we will talk about this in future shows, is there were a number of bills to limit the rights of transgender people in Maine, whether it was on sports teams or in healthcare. They pretty much followed a national playbook. They really didn't have anything to do with Maine, but they were introduced and they were just hateful, bigoted bills. And luckily I can say that all of those bills were defeated this year, which is really awesome for Maine and really important for those folks who are transgender in Maine, knowing that they are safe and welcome and they can live their lives as they are. The other thing that got passed in that category was there was a lot of anti-choice bills. See, they're celebrating. They're actually calling the House back into session, or they're having a vote. That's what that means. Is all the anti-choice bills that happened this session were also all defeated. So, again, there's often a lot of stuff that comes, people put in from a national, you know, they are part of a national listserv or they're part of a national group, and they put stuff in. It doesn't really have much to do with Maine, and so it has been, it's been really good that we have been able to defeat those bills. So, okay, so let's talk about healthcare. Healthcare is incredibly important. Over and over again with candidates at the doors and anybody that we know in any candidates, we have folks that are always asking about healthcare because we don't have healthcare for everybody, and there are tens of thousands of Mainers who are not insured. And so there was a lot of work done. We started off our season talking to Senate President Troy Jackson about LD1. And LD1 had to do with COVID directly, and it made sure that testing was free, that vaccines were free, that everyone could get them, that they were distributed geographically through the state, and so that was awesome, and that passed, so that was great. The 3 other bills that Senator Jackson talked about were the Affordability Board. So this is basically a group that is going to look and keep studying and pushing, and sort of like the racial impact lines, it's like looking at how do we make healthcare more affordable. And so that is sitting also on the table down there. We are waiting for that to be funded, but we believe that it will be. There were also 2 prescription drug bills to prevent price gouging and to prevent the restriction of generics. Both of those bills, again, passed through the House and Senate against intensive lobbying from Big Pharma. But they passed with majorities from the House and Senate and bipartisan majorities. Unfortunately, 2 days ago, the governor vetoed both of those bills as well. She cited legal concerns. Those haven't borne out in other states, so this was really, really disappointing. There were 2 bills, one for universal health care and one for expanding Maine Medicaid to more population so that we can get folks in. And those bills, again, were passed. Awesome. Those bills were passed and are being held over, which means they'll be talked about more in next session. I am very excited. We're going to have one of our first guests here, which is very exciting. Sarah Woodbury. Come on in, Sarah. Sarah from Defender Health. So Sarah was one of our guests during the season.
Yes.
And this is where you usually find Sarah, in the State House, working her tail off. And she is the person, she's right there. She is the person who was telling us about forever chemicals And the problem, and if you remember, the young couple whose house they found all these toxic chemicals in their groundwater and in farms and all of that stuff. So, but there was some success.
Yes.
So tell us.
We had some great success.
Yeah. So tell us
Actually,
where we are.
just had success.
In there?
In the Appropriations
Awesome.
Committee. So the 3 PFAS bills that, one that would phase out the use of PFAS in non-essential products, the bill that would ban the use of PFAS in AFFF firefighting foam, and the bill that would require the DEP to test sites where the toxic sludge has been spread. All of them have just been passed out of the Appropriations Committee. They kind of stripped the fiscal notes for them because the funding was in the budget.
Yes.
So there are no longer fiscal notes on the bill, so they passed unanimously in the Appropriations Committee, and they're headed to the Senate table.
Awesome.
And we're very excited about that. And then additionally, the governor signed the bill that would set a 20 parts per trillion drinking water standard for PFAS in drinking water, and also a bill that would extend the statute of limitations for folks that have been impacted by PFAS contamination, allowing them to go after the responsible parties like the chemical companies within a longer time frame.
Wow, that is huge success.
Huge.
And also, sir, isn't there a money for remediation as well in the budget?
Yes. There's about $30 million in the budget, which would, not all of it is for remediation. Some of it is obviously for staff and that type of stuff, but there is funding for cleanup and remediation, funding for testing, and they allocated, I think, 17 new positions to DEP specifically for PFAS contamination.
Okay, and so those of you who don't know, No, just to say, adding positions to a department is like toxic here. All they want to do, especially the Republicans, all they want to do is make sure there's no more state employees. So that is a huge win for DEP to have the resources to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I always talk in acronyms, so my apologies.
No.
DEP is Department of Environmental Protection.
No, that's fine.
For folks that don't know. So we're very excited. So we've had a ton of success with the PFAS. Which is good. It's bad because there's a lot of stuff going on in the state and folks that need help, but the legislature has really stepped up. And the thing that's really amazing about it is it's been unanimous votes.
Yes.
The products bill was unanimous in the House, 105 to 0, I believe. They had some absentees because it was really late at night. But all of the bills that have had to deal with PFAS have passed out of committee unanimously. They've passed the House either under the hammer or unanimously. So we've had some really, really good luck this session. So we're very pleased.
That is awesome. And the great thing too is that it's both remedial for what's happened, but also preventative in terms of lowering the parts per million in the drinking water and all that stuff.
Correct.
So that is awesome. So if you want to know what good advocacy looks like, here it is, right
Thank
here.
you.
Sarah has done an incredible, and her whole organization has done
Defend
an
Our Health,
incredible job. Defend Our Health has been awesome. They're an awesome partner. They do lots of work, and they're working on some arsenic legislation and some other things that are happening. But it's just been so. Thank you for your great work.
Well, thanks for helping us spread the word.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Betsy. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate it. So that's awesome. It's just so exciting to have when it works, right? It's just really exciting. And so that's a really good one. And so while we're there, let's talk about, because we talked about healthcare, let's talk about the environment. Because PFAS was one of the things we talked about. We also talked about the Green New Deal. And Chloe Maxman, who I know is going to come down and join us, I think, her Pine Tree Amendment, which is a constitutional amendment that she talked with us about, that says that everyone in Maine has a constitutional right to a clean environment. And that bill is being carried over, but she made incredible progress and worked really hard across the aisle, was getting Republicans as well as Democrats to support this bill. So that is a really exciting thing towards climate change. There's a number of climate change initiatives in the governor's budget, which was awesome. And then, so we see more attention there. We see more investment there. Is it everything that we want? Does it do the whole enchilada? No, it does not. But we have made some great strides and importantly, some great investments. And I know that they're using some of the Recovery Act money federally that's coming to Maine in this direction as well. So we're going to see some changes and some help there as well. So the other big thing that came in terms of the environment is really looking about the environment and power is we interviewed Senator Rick Bennett and Senator Stacy Branner about consumer-owned utility. And that, so what that does is it allows Maine citizens to buy, as a co-op, Central Maine Power and Versant. So it happens in lots of other states. It happens in Nebraska. It's not a cutting edge. It's not a brand new thing. But CMP, as they told us on our show, is the lowest ranked utility in terms of consumer satisfaction and one of the highest ranked costs of utilities across this country. So, big change, big deal, lots of lobbyists in the other direction working for CMP and Versant, lots, and still that bill passed, and this bill lays out that whole buying power, but it also sends it out to referendum. So it sends it out to referendum so that Maine people can vote on whether or not they want to do this. And so, and it would not be a government-run thing. It's a consumer-owned entity, and we would elect the board of directors. And there's a lot of really forward-thinking things here. So that bill, oh my gosh, it was, if you ever wanted to do a reality TV show, right? It was drama. It was drama. First it passed in the House, then it passed in the Senate, then it has to go back, and when it came back to the Senate, it failed in the Senate, and so then we had to go back to the House, and then we had to amend the bill, and then it came back, and we won, and so now that bill is sitting on the governor's desk. She doesn't like this bill, and the question is really whether or not she's willing to send it out to referendum, or she's going to make the groups that are supporting this go out and get signatures. We were laughing about the fact that this signature collection about do you want to get rid of CMP might be the easiest signature collection that anyone has ever done. I think if we said this is where we were, people would line up and by blocks to actually sign that. So either way, it's going to go to referendum. The question is whether we have to go through a signature process and get it done, or whether it's going to actually happen and the legislature will send it out to the people, which means it will be on the ballot this November in November 21. If they have to collect signatures, it means that they'll go on the ballot in November of 22. So those are some of the environmental things that we have worked on, that we have talked to people about, that folks here have been working on so hard. So another whole section, and this is one of the places I'm excited for. I believe that Representative Charlotte Warren is going to come down. But one of the things that has been a sort of a centerpiece of this legislative session is criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform here in Maine and across the country is the civil rights issue of our time, I believe. And from the kneeling of the officer on George Floyd's neck, that brought to light what has been happening for years and decades, but brought it to light in a really dramatic way that we finally listened to looking at our epidemic of drug overdoses in Maine, the opioid crisis, where we now have, as they told us on our show, we have 11 people dying a week from overdose. There was a lot of bills that were passed to try and change this. And to change this really, and we'll talk with Charlotte about this hopefully when she comes, to really change it from a criminal issue to a public health issue. So there were a number of things, and we did a number of shows around this, associated issues. One of the first ones we did was, great. Well, I'm going to pause there because we have one of our guests who is a very dear friend and an amazing representative, Representative Lori Gramlich from Old Orchard Beach, who is here.
Hi.
Come on, just sit right, if you stand
all
right
right.
on that tape, right,
Okay.
and then right there we are. And
Hi.
So,
I might have to run if the bell rings.
I know, the bell rings, she has to
Okay.
go. But so I wanted to talk. We're talking about the things that happened. One of the things was gun safety reform.
Yes.
And I know that your bill just got signed, and so if you want to tell folks what your bill does, it's so exciting.
Well, just a finer point, it actually did not get signed,
Oh, it hasn't got signed yet.
but it has become law without the governor's signature.
Okay.
So that's great.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Okay. We'll take it anyway we get it.
So it's LD 1392, and thank you. It is essentially it's an act to require the Department of Health and Human Services to release an annual report of firearm fatality and injury that includes suicide, homicide, and domestic violence, which is really critically important because it will give us information to really ascertain just what kind of issue we have in terms of gun violence in the state of Maine, and something that's really personally near and dear to my heart. Not that homicide and suicide are anything to make light of, but certainly and we know that we have a high rate of suicide in the state of Maine, but certainly in
With
terms
firearms.
of, with firearms, yes, but certainly in terms of domestic violence.
Yeah.
So I think that's really critically important.
Well, and I think the other piece of this that's so important is that it really looks at it from a public health perspective.
Precisely.
Which is to have this in the CDC, which is our public health department, and to have the Department of Human Services looking at it, not as a criminal issue, not as a gun safety issue or gun control issue, but really looking at it public health. I think that's like one of the biggest shifts that's happened in this session.
Absolutely, Betsy. I mean, it really, in my opinion, as a social worker who has been working in the public health arena for a long time in the state of Maine, it's really important that we look at this through the lens of public health so that we can get good public health data that will inform our decisions moving forward.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful. I also just want to say, even though we talked about it yet, we will have Lori back to talk about mental health and children's mental health. Lori has been a tireless advocate for community mental health, making sure kids come home from all the placements they've had. We have not had success yet, but one of your bills is on the table, and so we're going to talk about it again next year. Hopefully we're going to get funded, so we'll get you on the show and talk more about that.
Well, and just to kind of cue people up for that, this bill did not get embedded into the budget, and I was just in the Appropriations Committee, and it did not get moved off the Appropriations table. So it will be carried over, and I'm really hopeful that we can make it a priority that children in need of behavioral health care services get the services that they need so that they can stay in their homes and stay with their families and hopefully prevent them from needing future care as adults.
Absolutely. And you are an incredible advocate. I mean,
you.
we are so lucky to have people like Lori and Lori serving us. So thank you so much, and good luck. And I hope we're not here too late tonight.
Hey, you know, it is what it is. That's all good. And thanks to Betsy for doing all the great work, Betsy, that you've been doing for, I hate to say decades, but
40 years, I think.
Decades in the building. So thanks for having me.
No, awesome.
And I really appreciate it. Okay.
Yep, let us know if you need coffee.
I might need something. How about some espresso coffee beans? That'll be okay. I gotta go.
Yep, go, Lori. Thank you. Thank you. So again, that's Representative Lori Gramlich. And we also have, stopping in, this is so awesome, Morgan Riley, who I spoke about before. So Morgan, come join us back. Welcome back to Maine.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on again.
You can stand right there, then they'll be able to see us, yeah. So congratulations, right?
Yes, thank you so much.
And so your Maine Service Fellows program got signed into law?
Yep, my Maine Service Fellows program, LD 1010, was signed into law by the governor.
So remind people again what it is, because it's so awesome.
The Maine Service Fellows program is a state-based service program that addresses a crucial gap in the service infrastructure here in the state. It allows for rural communities to be able to host service fellows that might not be able to support traditional service programming, because this program is designed specifically for Maine's rural communities in mind. And these service fellows are going to be working specifically on issues that are going to be affect us now and are going to be affecting us for years to come. Issues on housing and housing insecurity, issues on public health, especially mental health, and also looking at workforce development. But one of the reasons why I put in this bill was, as one of the youngest members of the State House, is keeping younger Mainers here in the state long term. That's a serious concern, and that's something that we need to focus on.
Yeah,
and so many young people, so many people my age and around my age want to serve. They want to be able to give back to their communities, to give back to their state. And my hope is that this program will be able to kind of give them that opportunity to do so. And with my program, it's designed to be able to provide a living wage. Kind of translates roughly to about like a $15 minimum wage, but also with student loan reimbursement. So right now, currently, it's signed into law, working on securing ARPA funding, and hopefully we'll also be able to get ARPA funding, because right now I'm also working with Volunteer Maine, which is the state-based, this is the state service program, service organization. But also working on a Maine Climate Corps as well. So that's something that I've been working on, and the governor also signed in a study that I'm doing, that I'm working with. So next session, hopefully we'll be able to have the bill in. So hopefully 2022, 2023, we'll have our Maine Climate Corps as well, because I see the Maine Service Fellows program the Maine Climate Corps as indispensable, as seeing them as working alongside each other, and being able to give a whole generation of Mainers the chance to serve.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And okay, so I just want you folks watching to know, I've been around, as Lori just said, for a long time, 40 years. And to have a young legislator, first of all, that you're willing to serve is awesome. Thank you for running and winning and all that. But then to have a bill, like, it's not a lot, I don't know if you even know this, but to have, as a freshman legislator, to have a bill like this that's so consequential and addresses the issue of having young people in Maine, and then have it signed into law and making it happen, that's awesome. I mean, it speaks a lot to your perseverance and your smarts, and and your idea, and the importance of keeping young people in Maine. So we are so grateful, and this is just, watch this guy. This guy, you got to meet up know this guy, because you're going to see lots more of him, and he's like one of our rising young stars in Maine. So thank you. Thanks for being on the Maine Challenge before, and I'm so fun to be able to.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again. Yeah, thank you so much.
You get to do your congratulations that we made it happen, and I'm sure it's because you're on Maine Challenge.
Of course. The governor said she saw it, and she had to sign into law. But if you're watching this, definitely go on to, I think it might be volunteermaine.gov, but watch that and apply for a position once it's starting, because hopefully the application will be up and going, open sometime fall or winter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay!
Awesome. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Good luck with the rest of the day. Thanks. Thank you, Morgan. All right. Awesome. So we have a couple people that I know are going to try and stop by, and I know we're getting near the end of our time, but I just want to go over a couple other things that we've talked about. So Lori was here talking about her gun safety bill, her gun data collection. There were a number of gun safety pieces of legislation that were on, and we had two people from the Gun Safety Coalition on our show, but one of the bills that actually passed, many of them did not pass, bump stocks, waiting periods, background checks, universal background checks, but one that did pass that's so important is the safe storage. And what that bill was, they described it to us, what that bill is to make sure that if you have guns in your home, that the ammunition and the guns are in separate places, and that they're locked, and that access to them by children under 16 is very limited. Again, that bill went into law without the governor's signature, but it's so exciting. There has not been gun safety legislation of any sort, that has passed here in decades. So this was a really important piece of legislation. And again, Lori's bill that really shifts the conversation from criminal to public health is a really big piece. It's a huge piece. So speaking of that, I was talking about criminal justice reform, because I want to talk about that in the same way. Because the big thing that happened, and a lot of things were proposed, not a lot passed, but the big thing that happened in criminal justice reform was the beginning of shifting the conversation to what makes sense, what works. We've been doing the same playbook for opioid addiction, for incarceration of youth, for our criminal justice system. It's been essentially the same for the last for decades. And it isn't working, right? It's just things are getting worse in terms of the number of brown and black people who are being incarcerated, the institutional racism there, looking at our opioid crisis, which I already mentioned. So I just want to talk about the disposition of some of the things. One of the things we talked to two guys from Inside Out who were incredible, and about closing Long Creek. And what we talked about, and what was amazing, is that there was a bill to actually shut down the youth incarceration facility in Maine, which is unheard of. And that bill passed. It passed in the House, and it passed in the Senate, because people said, we shouldn't have young people in cages. It doesn't work. Even there will be secure facilities, but to have young people housed, and again, I've said this a million times, so I'll say it again, to spend $660,000 per child per year to keep them in Long Creek with 187 staff people, right? And doing something that we know doesn't work. The recidivism rate is huge. I mean, they always almost transition into the adult correctional system. So it didn't get signed by the governor, it got vetoed, and we couldn't override the veto. The veto wasn't overridden, but it was incredible to begin to have that conversation, and I think we're going to see a lot of movement on that going forward. Same thing with drug, looking at the criminalization of drugs and sentencing for drug crimes. There was a bill, again, that shifted it from looking at it as a criminal issue to a public health issue. And it was it wasn't a full decriminalization, it was changing what was happening and how we criminalize it, but it really looked at it from a public health issue. And when people are found with drugs, not the dealers, but people using, then the option was to send them to treatment and get them treatment instead of jail time. So that bill, again, Maine got further than any other state in the nation in terms of passing it in the House. It almost passed in the Senate, but it totally changed the conversation. One thing that did pass was the decriminalization of having syringes. It used to be that if you had syringes, you could go to jail just for having empty syringes. And so again, that's the beginning of saying this is a public health issue, not a criminal issue. We also were really excited. We had Ben and Jerry on to talk about ending qualified immunity for police. And that bill was heard in judiciary, and unfortunately, it did not get a majority ought to pass out of that committee, so it didn't go anywhere, it died. But they had a really good hearing about it. Ben and Jerry ended up testifying as a result of being on our show, which was fun. And so that was really awesome as well. So again, beginning the conversation, not just like tiptoeing in this conversation, but really doing things that are going to change the conversation, and that was awesome. And I think that was it in terms of criminal justice reform. We talked about gun safety. And the last thing we've talked about that I want to talk about is the importance of running. I want to give a huge shout out to every single legislator, the ones I agree with and the ones I don't agree with. But every single person who is here has stepped up, sacrificed time with their families, their jobs, to serve the Maine people, to do what they think is best. So I want to say to all of them, thank you so much for serving. Thank you for being here. We had a chance to talk with Senator Chloe Maxman about how she won in a district that she wasn't supposed to win, with Senator Craig Hickman, who won a special election, again, in a district that was really hard to win. And we talked with local women who were running on the local level. That is both important in and of itself, but is also the feeder system into our elected people here. So we are very, very excited about that. And would you have something to report? Come in. I was just singing your praises again.
I didn't know where you were talking about gun safety and sensible gun legislation. I didn't know if you were aware yet, but Representative Vicki Dudera's
Yes,
bill,
we just talked about it, the safe storage. Yes, we did.
I just looked it up this morning. It's made it into public law.
Yes, I know. It's awesome.
Which is really, really great.
I know. As we said, it's the first public safety thing that has been done in forever. So
yes,
yeah.
And I didn't know if you wanted to have an opportunity to talk to Vicki. When she's upstairs.
I did. I told her to come down. So
okay, when I go up,
tell her to come.
Let her
Tell her to come on down.
Smile, friends.
Look, we love her. Look
Hey,
at this. Oh my gosh.
her.
Okay, this is like what makes my job here awesome. Because this is Senator Stacy Branner, who is like the rising new senator star. We love her. We love her. We love her. And so this is awesome. Stacy was on with Senator Rick Bennett on the Maine Challenge to talk about consumer-owned utilities. Yes.
Yes.
And so why don't you tell us what is happening?
And I will let you go,
Okay.
and I'll let Representative Dudera know.
Send Vicki down.
It's good to see you. PFAS, all that's all good. I was just sitting up there. Perfect.
Awesome.
I'll talk to you. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so come, if you stand around that tape, Stacy. So again, Senator Branner, and she is just awesome. She is just really awesome. So yay. So good news.
Yeah, great news. We got 1708 through the Senate. It has been enacted, and now we are waiting to see what the governor does. And we're pretty excited. Our fingers are crossed, but the reality is, if we don't get it on the ballot with this endeavor, it'll be a people's referendum in 22.
So what I said earlier is the only question really is whether it's going to be in 21 or 22,
Exactly.
and whether you guys send it out or not.
Right.
So Stacy, as you worked on this bill, and Stacy is a new legislator, a new senator. So did anything surprise you? Was it was it harder than you thought? Did anything or did it go pretty much as you expected it to go?
I think this has been the most fascinating and interesting piece of legislation I've worked on this session. And as a new legislator, I came in really looking for opportunities to collaborate and have big experiences with lots of teamwork. And this bill has definitely provided that. And it's been very bipartisan between Representative Carlo and Senator Bennett, and then the Democratic caucus representative and Senator folks. So I feel really good about it. I'm excited. I feel like it's got a lot of groundswell. I mean, I think that the groundswell of public support has been phenomenal, and that level of collaboration is also quite powerful, and I think it speaks a lot to the potential for what this will mean when it's on the ballot.
Yeah, I do too. I'm very excited. And just so everyone knows, so it passed and then it failed and then they had to amend it on the floor.
Yep.
So it wasn't easy. It wasn't just like a straightforward, in case you think they just introduce it, they talk about it and then they vote. No, that did not happen this time. And we were outnumbered in terms of lobbyists by about 80 to 1, I think.
And money.
Money. I mean, the number of Central Maine Power and Versant lobbyists here. I mean, I would, when this would come up, you would see gaggles of them, or like when the bill would be voted on in the Senate, you can sit back in the gallery, and when it would be done, like half the gallery would get up and leave because they were done with, and moving down to the Senate. So
that's right.
It was
so
really.
I think it'll be another, interesting process to see what happens next. I'm excited, and.
Well, with you at the helm and in leadership position and doing what you're doing, I know it's going to be successful. But you have done, and she's done so much work on so many things. This is just one of them, but it's the one we talked about. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for your work.
That's my buzzer reminding me to come see you.
Well, I'm glad you did. Yes, I am so glad you came to see me.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for running and serving.
Yes.
Great. And especially these days that are long. So thank you so much.
Yes.
You're awesome.
Turn that off.
Thank you. Yeah, go see Betsy downstairs.
Because I knew I would be just talking to somebody. Because we're between,
So just before you go, is there anything else you're really excited about?
Oh, I'm thrilled about extended producer responsibility 1541.
Okay,
that is a bill that we worked really hard on getting out of our committee. It's extended producer responsibility. So the short story is that we would be looking towards producers of packaging to cover the cost of disposal so that we can start to diminish the responsibility of municipalities to cover all the costs. The goal being that packaging companies would use more recyclable packaging, and so we would increase the recyclable content of packaging. So
awesome.
We're waiting for
plastics. More plastics.
Yeah. So the word on the street is that appropriations just approved the funding off the table.
Awesome.
Yes, and so
just
we'll enact it.
in the Senate?
Yeah, and then we'll wait for signature from the governor.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Again, we'll keep our fingers crossed there.
So this is the second freshman legislator that we've had who are just making so many strides and helping us so much. So.
And that was also an incredibly collaborative endeavor between Representative Kurhowski as the lead sponsor and Senator Bennett as the Senate co-sponsor, and a bunch of other folks on board. So that was really quite fun. And Representative Tucker as my House co-chair of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee has been an incredible mentor, holding me up and showing me the way.
Right. And let us not forget, this is all during COVID.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Most of this was done by Zoom, so all the informal ways that especially new legislators get mentored and get, find people that they can trust and know what to do, none of that happened.
That's right.
It was all behind the camera.
We were in the Zoom where it happens.
Exactly.
Every day.
Yeah, and it was like, and it just, so that sort of informal stuff doesn't really happen. And then when you came back in person, it was like the time of the session where people are drinking from the water hose, or fire hose, or whatever that's called. And so
that first day was such a stimulus overload between the reality of all the people in the building that I hadn't been around that many people yet post-COVID. But yesterday, coming in and taking our masks off and seeing everybody's beautiful faces and smiles, it was just really one of the most heartwarming moments. And being able to hug everyone, so it just feels so good about being back and being here.
Yeah, it is great. And again, more kudos to you for doing it in this environment.
So thanks. It's awesome.
So you're great. We love you, and I'm sure we'll talk to you more as it goes. But you're doing all great things. That's awesome. Thanks.
Good to see you.
You too. I'll see you upstairs.
Did we? Were you?
He was our producer.
We did? Okay.
Yeah, that's
you
Brian.
look familiar, but in the box, right? It's all a little different.
This rocks.
Awesome. This is awesome.
Betsy, you were
Awesome.
awesome.
Okay.
This is great.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'll see you upstairs.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Stacy.
Great to see you.
So these are, and again, as I said, I have so much gratitude for the people who serve. So to wrap us up, I know some people have been tuning in and out, but I just want to say, to wrap us up, a lot of really good things have happened this session. A lot of really good things didn't happen this session. And a lot of really good things are sitting on the table, and we're waiting to see whether they're going to happen next session or not. But So for us, again, thank you to legislators who serve, for all the allies and advocates who spend countless hours and days and weeks planning and coming and being information resources and trying to help and do the collaboration Senator Branner was just talking about. But we're just going to keep going because it is really important. There's so much. We are at a pivot point, I think, and this is our chance to really move things forward for the people. So stand up, speak out, and stay tuned. Thank you for joining us on Maine Challenge. You can find any of the shows we talked about, any of the issues we talked about. You can go see the full episode about those shows. You can go see that on our YouTube channel, Maine Challenge, Maine YouTube channel. And we can also, you can find it on our Facebook, come to Maine Challenge. You can go to our website, Maine Challenge, because this summer we have lots of exciting things in store. And so please join us. Thanks to all the people, all the Maine people who come and testify, who share their stories, you are the people who move this legislation. You are the people who inspire and keep these legislators going. And we, together, we are how Maine should be. And that's what's beautiful about this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please join us again on Maine Challenge, and thanks for being with us here live on Facebook, and we will see you soon. Take good care.